Hello. Today I would like to share what I would do different if I knew 2 months ago what I know now about Claude Code. This is a few things I would do differently. I have a list of about 10 items, and I was reflecting today as I was actually really frustrated because of Opus 4.7 and degradation in quality of Claude's intelligence for code, and the fact that actually for the first time on the X plan, I run out of tokens and I had to buy more. Kind of annoyed, which is why I started reflecting on what I could have done different, right? When we have a problem or a frustration, that's when we look at solving our problem. So, this is what I'm gonna do in this quick video, but very important to think about how we can set ourselves up for success when we build apps, even if it's just for our own consumption, to avoid and time wasted, which is the whole point of really using AI, is to avoid wasting time. This is one way of doing that. Okay, so here we go. What I would do differently with Claude Code if I knew 2 months ago when I started what I know now. I have about 5 different projects going on right now that I'm iterating on over and over again, and I'm adding skills, plugins, and new functionalities. So I wish I had started documenting everything from day one. I think this is super important. You have all the documentation. This is the Visual Studio Visual Studio Code that I use for Claude Code, but even if you're in the desktop app for Claude Code, you can do a better job than this to organize yourself. You see how many files there are here. Imagine 5 projects, some of them way more complicated than this one. So with time, it becomes really complicated. You forget things. Claude releases a new model that all of a sudden isn't as maybe intelligent as the previous one you were using. And now there is a loss of understanding as you keep adding new things. So it's time to do that. One way I discovered today of doing that is if you go down here where you have like all these different functionalities, including all the you can run the context skill. Every time you do slash down here or slash directly here, you can type out any skill. So right now I can see, okay, everything that's going on, everything that I've added context. So this is really interesting to look at are my MCP tools, my agents, the memory files, the skills that I've added. I don't remember half of this is how fast things can get out of control. Now, another really, really important one, and I learned this one from Sabrina Ramonov. Thanks, Sabrina, for always being so awesome and sharing your knowledge freely. And ask the 95 confidence question when you start a project. Now, what this means really is when you start a project in Claude, you should always give it as much context as possible, a briefing file. What is Claude's Bible for this particular project? I'm gonna try and find one here. Okay, let's take an example here. I created a content marketing plan so I can automate my content pipeline for my small business coaching service for AI. And so I wanted to give as much background: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, goals, monthly webinars and challenges, where to pull the data from in terms of looking at my competitors, the other people influencing in the space. And then I created a weekly content process and a content hub, dashboard update, and creation on every Friday. So I told it what to do every single week, and then monthly to also do an activation and conversion strategy, which I'll do in the beginning of May. I'm going to look for AI conferences, create lead magnets, and a DM strategy, one webinar masterclass event a month. All right, so I've given it so much information, super important. Once you have all this information put together when you start a project, you would come here. Let's say the file is called lead magnets. So we do add lead magnets to then create more lead magnets, basically. To create more lead magnets, ask me clarifying questions until you are 95% confident. So this is a superpower that you can give Claude Code to ask you for as much context as possible, to make sure it is almost 100% confident and is not wasting your time in tokens. Perfect. So now this is for the beginning of the project, let's say. However, as I keep adding to the project today, I was actually updating this content pipeline, and I was getting frustrated because of 4.7 sucks, and basically it kept trying to do things without me approving, which wastes tokens, of course. So I was getting really frustrated. And so then I started saying every time, ask me for approval first before you do anything, and ask me questions until you are 95% confident that you know what you're doing. Extremely important. This is like the one game changer, because it's like you tell a new employee to do something and they have no idea. They have to ask you questions until they're 100% sure that they understand correctly. This is really important. Make sure you do that, because if you don't, you're going to regret it down the line when a shittier model of Claude comes out and all of a sudden it's like gobbling up tokens way faster and doing stupid things that you didn't ask it to do in the first place. So you really need to put some guardrails. Another thing, I'll automate something one week, we'll go through the whole process, it will seem fine. And then the next week when I need to run the process again, it fails. Or I think it's running the process, but when I check 4 or 5 days later what's going on, it's failed. So make sure to foolproof it in terms of repeatability. We're here to do away with boring, repeatable standard tasks. So in the beginning, it's going to take, a few weeks before you test it enough to know that it's actually working. But one guardrail you have to put up is getting errors caught early. Like Claude has to put in a process when you automate something to catch errors and to make sure it can debug itself. So you have to ask it so you can catch errors before they actually cost you. Be very explicit what you want Claude to add to the main project MD file. When you first start a project, every project has an MD file. It's just a text file with all the instructions for Claude, but it's just something to know because it seems intimidating because it's a different file extension, but it's just a text file specific for Claude. In the beginning, it creates the file from all your requirements, but then as you keep adding to a project and iterating, this is where things can get lost over time because you're telling Claude to change things. So make sure to tell it to add it to the master file that runs the whole process if you change anything. It's not just a one-time. It doesn't know if it's a one-time thing or if it's something that it should keep doing every week. In my head, I'm setting up a weekly process, so it should know that. And you should always ask it, hey, did you add this new update to the MD file, to the master file, to the process file? No? Okay, you have to add it. This is a new process. As you keep doing things over and over again, ask yourself, is something worth becoming a skill? Like today, when my content pipeline was being frustrating and Claude was making stupid mistakes and making decisions I didn't ask it to do, I thought to myself, Alice, could this have just been a skill? Something repeatable, standardizable that I can always invoke. So for example, I made a Alex Hormozy style skill to help me just adopt a Alex Hormozy style in my marketing, which I really like. Every time now I do marketing, I ask Claude to pull from the skill. So I can create LinkedIn posts with it, cold outreach sequences, offers, campaign briefs, anything. If you're going to keep doing something, think if it's worth it being a skill. So I might create like a skill about my own content pipeline now and just have all the information there and keep adding to it as I keep changing it. Manage your model token usage. I hadn't had a lot of issues until recently, but down here again where the forward slashes, you can switch models. You can see I switched out of Opus 4.7 because supposedly it's very capable for complex work, but actually it just leads to a mess that costs me a lot of tokens. I switched to Sonnet so I can consume less tokens. And then down here, I'm talking about compacting context. So one way of also freeing up tokens is by using the context skill in a conversation. You see this really long conversation. Sooner or later, we should always compact a conversation. It just frees up a lot of memory, a lot of tokens, and it helps Claude be more efficient, and it helps you with your token usage. So definitely be proactive about it. I got complacent because I hadn't run into issues before, and now I'm like, damn, I had to actually upgrade and pay more. So this last one I will go over is thinking about productionizing your app. Maybe it's for a client, maybe it's to sell it to other people, or just to be able to access it from everywhere on your phone, not just on your desktop with local files. So think about that. You don't have to decide immediately what that looks like, but I'm currently in the process of figuring it out after 2 months, because now I'm like, okay, I can see some of these apps that I would want to like be able to access from other places or potentially open them up to adding users. And I want to do it in a secure way that's, of course, not on my machine, because if it's local, I can't share it with anyone else. Now I'm looking into, for example, a virtual machine, but we don't have to go too deep into that. It's just something to think about and start learning about before it's too late. You don't have to figure it out right away if you're just playing around for yourself. But, I would have to, for example, have my computer on in the morning at 8 a.m. to run certain processes. I don't want to do that. It doesn't matter if I'm still sleeping and my computer is closed. I want certain updates to run, and I can only do that if I am not putting those processes on my computer, and it doesn't have to be awake. And of course, there's ways to keep your computer awake, but that's not really, to me, a sustainable way of doing it. Especially if I have clients, where are they going to have their apps live so they can access them from wherever they are securely? And security, of course, is another consideration about production. Never ever be complacent about security. It's something that when you deal with data should always be top of mind, which is why so far my files are on my computer, but now I'm going to look into a safe way of moving them into the cloud. For example, on EQ2 by AWS. All right, well, we got around almost 10 best practice I gave you. All right, well, this is what I would do differently with Claude Code building now that I know what I know after 2 months of almost using Claude Code every single day. I loved every minute of it, but I would love to avoid further frustration by running out of tokens and by wasting my time with. So AI is changing and growing, and sometimes not for the best. And you have to be smart about how you work with it so you can make sure to get the best of it for yourself and for your projects. Either way, this is just the first 2 months of a journey that I think and I hope is going to last a long time. I hope these apps I'm building now are going to be around in a year, running smoothly. I mean, they're going to be running smoothly in a month, but in a year, they're going to be really making a difference in my day to day. And maybe some of them are going to be out there helping out other people's problems.